November 20th, 2017. It is 6:23 p.m. and the executive board meeting of the Graduate and Professional Student Council is called to order. And the first order of business is call to the audience. Seeing no members of the audience, we will move to review and approve the meeting minutes from the November 6th meeting. I have a motion to approve. Second.
Aye.
Hearing no objections, the meeting minutes are approved as submitted. The next order of business is the executive board meeting schedule for December and January and for the spring semester. So in that order, given the holiday season coming up, the general council is likely to meet one time in December. It's appropriate for the executive board to also meet.
Sorry, where are we on the agenda?
Number 4.
Where do the minutes?
Yes.
Yes.
Did you have any objections to them?
No.
Okay. Just to make sure.
So as it currently stands, the scheduled meeting for December is the 4th, I believe. So I wanted to have a discussion about that meeting date and a need for other meetings in December, depending on what the executive board thinks is appropriate. We could meet on the 4th and then not meet again until January. We could change the date of the meeting. We could have 2 meetings. Any thoughts?
Let me check my calendar real quick.
We're meeting the week before break begins as a second meeting for executive board? Or for both?
We could meet anytime.
I just can't do the 7th, so I'm going to Phoenix on the 7th.
But I don't know, I believe Carolyn is going to be out of the country.
I'll not
Maybe
be
at
in
some point.
city after 15th. I'll be in California till 8th or 9th of January.
But Carolyn's leaving the country. I'm assuming she's not going to leave the country until after finals.
Correct. Yeah, I think it's like mid-December
Okay.
through late December, but I don't know the exact dates, but I do believe that she's going back to Germany
I'll be here.
for the holidays. I will be out of town from like the 4th through the 14th through the 17th,
Okay.
but that's like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then I'll be back, so it kind of depends on what you all think we want to do, how much you think we need to accomplish during the break.
I mean, I think some less so for executive board itself, but for governing docs. We need to hammer that out. We got to get that figured out so that next semester we're working with something reasonable.
So I'm thinking we could do that instead of doing an EB meeting. Or
Twice?
use the EB meeting as the governing docs. Because I agree. I don't know if there's much to do over the break.
Okay, so the executive board will meet on the 4th.
I think that's,
I think for me, I think 4th would work for me.
yeah.
Okay, and then going into January for the executive board meetings. Currently, the schedule would be to meet on January 1st, but obviously that's New Year's Day. And in the middle of the winter break, so the next meeting, as is, would follow on the 15th. We are back in action by the 15th, but it's also Martin Luther King Jr. Day. I don't know if that affects people's schedule or not, but
Well, are we locked into
Monday.
the schedule that we're currently on? If we're, I mean, because I think we need to also look at
I'm still trying.
what's decided for when
CC is going to be.
GC is going to
Mhm.
be?
Like if you want
Most
to have
probably
like a,
GC will be on Monday. I sent reminder twice and I think mostly people are good with Monday. There are around 19 to 20 votes for it.
Okay, great.
So
So then we would be
So
able to do every other.
maybe for the
Yeah.
first 2 weeks, can we do it on a different day for the EB meeting? Since we have,
Well, I mean, I think that first one we're still in break, so we may still be contending with people being gone for break.
Right.
For the second. But I definitely think if we're gonna be doing the 15th as an EB week, we probably want to meet on the 16th so that we don't go that long.
So for the general council meets on Mondays starting in January.
Mhm.
When will the first general council meeting be?
If it's a Monday, it's gonna be 22nd.
Oh, because that's when school starts. But do it.
School starts at 10.
Right. I just mean that the 8th,
It'll
we
be on
haven't
22nd.
technically started the semester.
how many meetings
no,
are
we can
supposed to
start
have?
from
Two.
15th. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Well, no, but if that's
15th 's
A, that's a holiday. It's a national holiday. B, that would be technically an EB week. Is what we're looking at.
But we could flip it.
Sure.
I was thinking that EB meeting to happen before my GC meeting so that and have some time difference so that I can have some stuff in my agenda
That will be
also.
difficult
Because usually my pre-agenda is like nothing and
Mhm.
then I add lot of stuff because EB meeting happens and then there's lot of stuff got added in.
Okay.
Yeah, so I want at least having and Nick Haley always send me email. Hey, we don't have anything in pre-agenda, so let's don't have the meeting. Let's have electronic meeting or so whatsoever.
One
So I
other
have to explain him.
One other question, in our governing docs as they stand right now, what are the rules for meeting when there's breaks? Or
General
did they not?
council needs to meet 2 times
Okay.
during the academic year each month. But they can vote to meet 1 time for December, January, and May.
Okay.
Does January fall in there? I thought it was just December and May.
I can double check, but
Okay.
I believe it was all 3.
Okay.
Probably because of semester starting, semesters ending, etc. I'm wondering though if we can keep it to 2, because I'm not opposed to meeting on the 8th. I think most of us would be back by then, and if not, then
8th,
we're wrong. As an executive board,
8th of January.
yes.
Okay, I'll not be here, but I can miss one meeting. I'll not be here on 8th of January.
Well, and we're just
So
bouncing around ideas at the moment.
I'll be back on the
okay.
8th. I'm just gone the first week of January.
I don't have anything set in stone yet, but I'm just trying to get out to Utah for Christmas, and
So
I don't want to be gone that long, so.
I'll be back on the 7th.
Okay.
I can do that 8th.
From here, so I'll be
And then, I mean, then the one thing we're contending with too is that we either wouldn't have a GC meeting until the 29th, which I don't know if that's a good idea, or we reschedule the week of Martin Luther King Day for the 16th, if possible. I mean, that's what we're doing for Thanksgiving anyways, is,
Yeah,
Maybe
Jesse just set EP meeting before my meeting. I really want that to happen. It will really help me out.
Did we already get the next semester's schedule set?
So Marie, you are saying for 15th or for 8th?
Okay. So
I'm just
Article
throwing ideas around.
9 of the Constitution, meeting of the GPSC. Frequency, the GPSC shall hold meetings at least once per month throughout the calendar year and at least twice per month during the academic year. GPSC meetings during December, January, and may occur only once per month at the discretion of the General Council. So GEC has to meet, definitely has to meet 1 time in December and 1 time in January.
Okay. So, I mean, we could also, because we need to do so much work on the governing docs, do another round of the governing docs right before the semester begins, and then have an off EB meeting on the 16th-ish, or sometime that week when it works best for everybody. And then the 22nd would be a GC.
I kind of like this thing. On 15th EB meeting, and we can do that EB meeting a kind of EB and governing docs.
Yeah.
And then on 22nd we will have GC meeting, and on 29th we can have our second EB meeting.
As long as it's in the evening and as long as it's like not on December 7th, it's good.
December 11th?
What do you mean?
7th. I can't do, wait, I can't.
January
do,
7th, you mean?
Oh,
Oh.
I'm saying any day we can meet them down except for the 2 days I just cannot. And that's
Okay,
December
that's fine.
7th and on January I'm fine.
It's alright, I've got a paper due on the 8th or a project. Nothing's happening on the 7th
And
except.
I think it's also the 5th. I can't do the 5th or the 7th.
Of December?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, so just glancing at the calendar, I think that schedule works. But one thing we need to keep in mind is that in March, the general council meetings would be on the 5th and the 19th. The 5th is spring break. And so is that whole week, and so we will need to move the meeting on the 5th for general council.
Oh wait, can you restate it, because I have to reserve the rooms according to that.
Yeah, so March 5th
Uh-huh.
would be a general council meeting date, but since it's spring break, we should move that either to March 1st or 2nd, which would be the Thursday or Friday of the
I
week
think
before.
Thursday will work.
Well, Thursday that week is also spring break. So are you talking about Thursday the 1st?
And the 12th will be our EB meeting, so
Yes.
we cannot have.
I mean, we can adjust that, so if we wanna have general council meeting that date, then we can also move the EB date. Cause I think it's harder to align general council schedule with that number of people versus the smaller executive board, but,
So general council, like we're doing Monday meetings now, next semester.
yes.
I like that.
Yeah, I think that should, help with the, agenda, and that way it's not spread, like it is now, where it's difficult. I think that will help with that, but we do need to keep that in mind for March. And reschedule that GC meeting that would occur on the 5th. But then I think for the rest of the semester, it should work just fine. Unless anybody else sees any conflicts. President's Day, I guess that's a thing.
Yeah.
That would also be a date of a GC meeting.
Well, is it on Monday?
That is the problem with Mondays in the spring semester, is there's a lot of Monday holidays.
Yeah, Monday the 19th is President's Day.
That's bad thing.
That's just one of the challenges.
But do we get President's Day off
I
from
think
school?
so. I mean, hold
I don't
on.
think we do either, but honestly.
I'm looking at the academic calendar.
How would I know?
Everybody's looking at the every calendar.
And I'm opening snacks.
So the only days with no
Good
classes
job.
is Martin Luther King.
Why are you talking to pieces?
Okay, tell me what.
The only day with no
Love the
classes
good
is
stuff.
Martin Luther King and Reading Day.
What is the Martin Luther King?
That's January 15th.
Okay.
Okay, so we don't get President's Day off.
We only have one holiday.
Some states do, so.
Oh my goodness, then we cannot have ED meeting on 15.
We-
That's what we were saying, like, over and over again. We could move that though, because that's a little bit easier to schedule for all of us. And maybe just do that week on a
I'm
Tuesday
sad.
or something
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
that's what I was going to say. Let's do it on Tuesday or Wednesday or Sunday.
So, I mean, it looks like either way we look at it, I mean, well, no, because then general council, we'd be missing spring break and,
President's Day.
oh, but President's Day doesn't matter. So either way you look at it,
No, President Day
EB
is not holiday.
Okay.
yeah, if we're doing one or the other, you're gonna miss a Monday for EB and GC regardless. So unless there's a reason spring
Why
break
can't we
week.
do like a GC like we, or EB like we did last time? Do like a breakfast thing on Sunday. I'm down.
Have an official meeting that way?
Yeah, I'm down.
Okay, we'd have to have it here so we could record. Do all that fun stuff.
It's true.
Well, we don't have to record the meetings.
Oh, we don't, okay.
We also don't have to do it here because I can record it anywhere.
Oh, perfect. Well, yeah, but at a restaurant. might
Oh,
be a little-
speaking of, we have to either record the meetings or post minutes. And then in the absence of our beloved secretary, does anybody volunteer to keep minutes?
We are recording it.
So then we'll go with the recording and not have minutes from this meeting?
Carolyn will do minutes. She always does.
God bless her.
I know, she's
She's
amazing.
really
Let's
super.
just make sure all of the votes and things are clear on the recording, cause that's one thing that
Yes.
There's someone to keep track
Makes
of those.
life
Yeah, that's
happier
what
for
I'm
her.
going to do.
Carolyn's advocate of the year for that. She's MVP.
I second
Okay,
that.
is anybody
Oh,
opposed
I-
with me letting him kind of sniff around the room?
It's
No,
okay.
wait for him
Let
to come.
him.
Just keep
We'll
them
see
away
how
from
it
me.
goes.
Just keep them away.
Yeah.
Whatever
We're
you
worried
do.
about yours, but
He's just curious and.
Come. Say hi.
Really?
What?
Oh.
Can you go hang out?
Oh, boy. Okay.
True story was so dog was my best friend. There was this point in my life where a dog was literally my best friend. It was beautiful.
Okay, so we have the executive board meeting schedule set for December 4th. And then January 15th. And 29th.
Wait, what's happening?
Oh,
on
we are
15th?
having a holiday on 15th.
Are we having a meeting on 15th?
15th is a
Of January.
Martin
That
Luther
is,
King Day.
that's Martin Luther King Day. That
So
day
we
is-
can
That's
have
a
on
real
16th.
holiday.
That is, yeah, it's a recognized holiday.
Are we
for
meeting
our
like
school.
officially like outside or?
We can just have the one on the 29th, and I think that's fine, because we will meet one time in January.
Yeah.
It's just a long time between December 4th and January 29th.
We can organize it on chats if we feel
We
like.
can do the 16th.
Let's
Just
meet.
that 1 week we can do it like a Tuesday.
By the way, who moved to approve the minutes? David, okay.
You seconded, right?
Yeah, I'm sending her an email, so I'll just put them all in the email.
Oh, okay. I'm also going to write stuff.
That'd be good to have a second
Yeah.
record of it.
So perhaps for January, we should say the official meeting is on the 29th.
Yeah.
And if we would like to get together an additional time on Tuesday, Sunday, etc., we can determine that. But to meet the requirements of the one meeting, we will definitely do the 29th of January. And then executive board meetings will continue throughout the semester on Mondays, on the weeks opposite of general council.
Should we have an official meeting on the 8th just to kind of, oh wait, no, that'll be,
Oh, okay. So we are having our first general council meeting on 22nd.
yes. So if we met on the 8th, it would be 2 weeks before the general council, but at least then we'd have something formalized before the GC meeting.
We, me and Dustin, we will have that thing, the Robert's rule.
Yeah.
On 22nd GC meeting. I think it will be good.
That might be a good idea to just hold off on that till the next.
Yeah, the
till
full
the first
semester
meeting.
and
Is that-
everybody will be
If a
new.
lot of people are gonna be gone tomorrow, then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I imagine a lot of people will miss in December just due to final schedule, travel schedule.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's probably,
Yeah.
and that gives plenty of time to get all of our ducks in a row, and then we'll have several new council members.
Yeah, and that PowerPoint thing makes sense because it's start of semester and
Yeah, I think so. Okay, so do you all wanna meet on the 8th officially?
I'm happy to.
8th of January?
Yeah.
You said you're gonna be gone, so
Yeah.
that's neither here nor there.
I'm not sure if my flight is early morning coming here or it's evening. I have to check that. Because it's 8.
Dustin will have just come in the day before. Do you feel like doing a meeting the day after you get back?
I can do that.
Okay.
I'll be doing that.
He shakes his head no and goes, I could do it. I'm just.
Okay, so executive board will meet on the 8th
Okay.
and the 29th of January. Okay.
And 4th in this semester, right?
Yeah, and December 4th will be our last meeting, and last year I know they did like a potluck for the last meeting.
4th of December? Oh, I'm
Yeah.
pretty much free now. I have only one final.
If we wanna do something like that, might not be a bad idea. If people aren't interested, that's fine too. Just, last year people brought a dish, set it up on this little table over here. It was a fairly short meeting. I think they went like an hour and a half, and then had the last 30 minutes or so to just kind of eat and chat and
For EB or GC?
EB. We could also do it for GC.
I think people for GC, if they don't have to do that, they wouldn't. They would rather just.
I tend to agree. And I don't know what the interest is here. I think there's plenty of business to do, so if we want to just have the regular meeting, if we want to bring snacks and snack during the regular meeting, it's kind of,
We can eat and chit chat. Oh, do stuff.
okay, so for the December meeting, if you would like to bring a snack or dish to share, we can do that, and if you don't want to, let me know and I'll bring extra goodies, but just do something a little bit different than the Tootsie Pops.
I've been told to make a mean like bowl of cereal, so.
Alright, David has committed to bring cereal.
Only if it's sugary cereal, though.
There is a
That's the
request
only
on
way
the
I
floor
make
for sugary cereal.
That's the only way I make it.
For the second? No. Okay, so I think the meeting schedule is set. So we will go for the next item from the treasurer, who has not been arrested during an executive board meeting.
Everybody literally looked
It's
at me.
our main accomplishment. This.
I was mortified.
You're like, she's not talking about me.
Not me, but the
I
previous
was
one.
like,
It's previous.
Not me. Not just like that's exactly what the guy got arrested would say.
That's exactly right. Do you have a budget update?
I did.
That wasn't the question. Do you have one? Tense matters, David.
No.
Tense
no.
matters. Just like
We're gonna-
which treasurer got arrested matters.
Well, I think
Devil's in the
Anand
details.
reset it to like 3 hours ago to like an earlier version, right?
I haven't yet. I made a copy, so we'll do a version change and then like we can update your changes to it.
Okay. Yeah. But that was pretty much it. I actually do have that one that Excel sheet pulled up where I had a question where it went, like where you want me to upload that stuff to. It was like an SSFAB GPSC grant, just like a general like the title. That's the title in Cindy's all accounts transactions sheet that she sends me every month, and I didn't know where to put it in our little spreadsheet.
What was the expenditure for?
Oh, it's just, let's see. There was a voluntary transfer in on October 10th, transfer of funds, SSFAB, TOF, professional opportunities development. On the 30th, it was moving budget of various accounts from I guess that's what it says. And then there was another, and it was an admin services charge. And then the other charge, there was 3, that voluntary transfer in, admin service charge, and another admin service charge. but actually there were no charges, but there was like a deposit of 10 grand.
So I believe that that is for the POD grants.
Okay. But then that's the thing, there's like another category for POD in our thing, in our online Excel sheet.
And does that one have any money?
Oh yeah, this is that POD. So this is what I'm looking at on her sheet.
How much is it?
Like it was a transfer of 10,000.
Okay. Is that BPR?
No. Well,
Oh, no, oh, sorry, that's S5, yeah, transfer to 10,000, that's fine, that's S5. That's the money we get from S5. 2,000.
Yeah, that should be like the only thing in the POD income revenue.
Yeah.
There's. Okay.
Is that not?
No, that's not what's on the sheet, but I think those are changes that I made today that I'll redo. Because I went back and I moved stuff around. Because after you changed the names, it did show me where to put stuff. But
Actually, that we should talk to Cindy about that actually, because SS5, the way the money, as I understand it, the way the money works is it's a negative until July, until like June 30th, when the money comes in and it clears out.
We'll assume that there'll be money.
There shouldn't be money in there. Shouldn't be anything transferred in.
Yeah, one of the questions I had is there are really large deposits into various accounts, like Showcase. That was one of the questions I asked on the.
Well, we sent the letters for 10,000 and 5,000 last Monday.
no, I think you're talking about that one's like 130 something. Right?
Yeah, it's like $130,000 into Showcase, which the budget for Showcase is like, a fraction of that, like 31,000. Yeah. So my question is, why are we depositing $130,000 into the account?
Do you know when that was?
That was on the 31st of October. Voluntary transfer in. Do you want the
Oh,
object number?
where
I can
was
give
it
to you.
at?
We
It
can actually
wasn't
look
into
up-
the REAP budget though?
We can look it up right now. If you pull up you access.
I wonder if it's
Because there
because that, I don't know what the money should have been going to, but that may be that just,
Go to financials.
the way Cindy just put things.
I'm blocked.
Which bucket people put things in.
Well,
What do you mean you're blocked?
I'm locked
the
out.
REAP account was on negative,
Ma'am?
they were gonna close down the account, so maybe they
This.
had to shift things around. I don't know why they shifted that much.
I don't know. I saw some big no, but
They didn't,
I moved
because
stuff around
they were going
because
to,
I misplaced other stuff.
they
'cause, like,
decided,
we have
Dr.
SS5
Jackson
and
was
they
like,
do
please don't, like, we're waiting for them to transfer
Yeah,
money
yeah.
in, and they were gonna just,
Yeah, you should.
Close
I
that
have
account.
access.
and so they may have shifted things around to make sure that like, we can still just have it open and
Where'd you
then
go?
plan to
Where'd
ship
you
it
go?
back.
You gotta find
That
your
That might be the case,
But this is
but that's a lot of money.
after,
It's
this is
not in here,
after, David's sheet was made. That he's going off,
Hmm.
right, 'cause
No, it was, when was this made?
like end of October.
Yeah,
This
it
is,
was after.
yeah.
I don't know.
Doc search.
So maybe we follow up with those questions with Cindy.
Sebastian.
It's okay, boy. It's alright.
The budget is
Stop.
always
What happened?
a tough
He heard
subject.
somebody outside.
We can all second that motion. I'm sorry, that was not a motion on the floor. I'm
You taking
sorry.
a shot at me again? You taking a shot at me again?
Why do you think you're here?
Stop.
I'm just trying, okay?
I know.
Wait, hold on. Did you go to Doc search?
He's making us go, be safe.
No, I have no idea where I'm at.
Anytime
my next one, I just open the door.
Go to Doc search.
Doc search.
Okay, and then you can type in the doc
Stay
number.
right there, don't tell me.
At least this is the most drama we've had at the EB meetings all semester.
You're under arrest.
Stop.
You mean David, right?
I just wanna see who like responded.
Do you wanna do this like
Okay,
later?
648
Yeah, I was just thinking.
77.
We move
Three,
forward
three.
meeting to it later.
Yes, we can do this later.
Well, you already have it. Just look
I know.
it up because I'm interested as well. It's a big chunk. It's $139,000.
It got my attention as well.
It's 139,000.
There are other items in the budget that we know are accurate, like we did not do the Wildcat pickup. There was $1,500 in the budget for that. At some point, we need to reallocate that money.
Yeah.
And have general counsel approve something. I can think of maybe a couple others.
I mean, the money is put into events, so I think that we,
It isn't. Oh, events, yes.
Yeah, so I think Patrice can figure out a way to use that money.
It's
If
not
she
all
has
about you.
another idea for an event, or she wants to spend more for a certain event, right?
That's where I wanted to get ideas for GPSA week
Oh,
at this meeting from you guys.
you asked me where that $721 some was. General Benz.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah, so I think it's fine if it stays within events,
I am
but
feeding
since it's a
graduate
line
students.
item that GC approved, I think we should ask them
Like what they think.
to
or
reallocate
approve
that
of
money,
this
even if
action.
it's just to free it up for other events. And I think that's a perfectly legitimate suggestion.
Not sure
Well,
why
what
we-
did you
after
find
this
out
thing,
about, like,
I don't
your
think- I don't know
support
why we should waste the time
for-
to ask them.
Because it's a line item in the budget that they approved specifically
So they
for
have
something.
to.
So if we're not gonna
approve for it
spend
to
it
be
for
moved.
that,
But, okay.
I mean, I don't know that it has to have approval. I also don't know that it would hurt. There's a ton of money in general council discretionary fund. So I feel like if there's, you know, something that they want to prioritize, that there's funding to do so. I mean, personally, I would support that staying in events and going toward, you know, showcase, GPSA week. There are a number of things coming up in the fall semester that I think would benefit from, you know, an additional $1,500.
I mean, I think that's something we can move forward with in the future when we do the budgets. It's like, okay, let's break events down by each individual line item.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
we
what I
have
was-
these events that we're gonna do. This is the cost that's, you know, done in the past. This is the budget we're gonna do for this year. You know, and then I think the events director can play around with it. You know, Patrice or whoever comes after her to play around with that money. 'Cause I think, but I guess your argument makes sense, so.
Yeah, I think it also makes sense to say, you know, there's a certain amount, and it's not that we are giving the direction that X dollars has to be spent on specific events or socials or, you know, particular national travel for advocacy, but we're looking at it and saying,
Yeah.
in total, we're allocating 10,000 or 100,000, whatever the number is, and then we are trusting that the committee director, et cetera, is responsible for creating a budget, staying within that budget to,
Yeah.
you know, pull off the number of events and et cetera that is necessary. So I think that's a good idea going forward. But for now, I think there are
It's
several things
technically
in the
a line
budget,
item.
like representative stipends. Council's only been half full all semester. So we've allocated, you know, a sum total of 19 to 20,000. So just roughly breaking it in half, 10,000, and then half the general council has been empty, so there should be an extra.
We've been going on a third. The last round was about a third.
Right, so there should be like
Based
an
on
extra few
attendance.
$1,000
Is this
in that pocket, and that could be allocated to something else. You know, if the general council wants to prioritize that, so.
Well, the idea
But
with that
I guess-
is that, you know, like, you can't, like, I guess you can start allocating money that wasn't spent as opposed to, like, in the future. But, I mean, I think the idea of putting it with retained fees is so that whatever's left over will just stay in retained fees for other purposes for future.
But often what happens in reality is if you don't spend it, like if you submit a budget that's under what you said your spending was going to be, is that the places funding those things will start cutting back on how much they give you. So if we
That's for
reallocate it,
The
that's,
SSO accounts, like the travel grants and research grants.
yeah,
But we do have the budget for our own like GC
okay,
events, so that doesn't. So
Okay.
that always like rolls over. So this year we got about 40,000 from the last year's
okay.
rollover.
Right, and that's money that has not been allocated,
Right.
right? Like we had that as a blank line item and strategically did not include that in the budget, so we wouldn't spend money that wasn't there because we didn't know how much was gonna roll over. And also with the idea that some would roll over, that would provide a bit of a cushion if there was an overage in a certain category. But given the fact that we now know it's, you know, approximately 40,000,
I mean, I like the idea of like trying to reallocate that for some purpose. I don't know if we need to like actually change that in the budget versus just, you know, getting that approved so we can spend some of that money at least, as opposed to, because we're not obviously not going to spend all of it. I think there's what, is it 200,000 in the retained fees account,
it's like
David?
I don't know, the Excel sheet got messed up.
But like, just off the top of your head.
it's like 160 in one and
I have a
39 in
screenshot.
the other,
I have a screenshot, hold on.
How is the
Just
couple
like,
100,000.
Yeah, I think we're looking at a couple 100,000. So
Might be like even, it might be like even up to like 250. But yeah, you're looking at a couple 100,000 in retained
yeah,
fees.
so we can.
And that's largely been budgeted,
for the
Don't-
admin
Yeah.
stipends?
but
Sebastian.
we know there's another 40,000 and then 1,000 from Wildcat Pickup, a few thousand from rep stipends. I know that, there was some overage or, that Patrice was able to pull off the orientation under budget. So I think there's
Yeah.
a chunk of money there. And if the general council wants to roll it over to future use,
In retained
you
fees,
know, I
it
think that's
was
perfectly fine.
the last screenshot I took was 176,733.
Yeah, something like that. So I'm thinking that, I mean, we're obviously not gonna use all of it.
But
we
that-
can use a chunk of it, maybe have another event, you know, a bigger event, maybe add some to social. I think that might be, oh, we have extra money this year, so let's just add a couple more. We could add more money to REAP, because REAP is still underfunded,
Yeah, and that was an area where,
just based on original fees, so.
yeah,
retain
there,
the-
there was the desire, I believe, last year to fund an extra $15,000. But due to the uncertainty of, you know, funding this year, we did not allocate that overage, but it might be appropriate to revisit that
Yeah. I
and
think-
possibly, you know, allocate 10,000, maybe 15, you know, whatever, to
think-
REAP, because I think there is that need there.
I think coming in January, after this round, because we have basically, I think, almost double the amount of applications this round. So after this round, we will know more about how much money we're looking at spending this year. And then we can try to allocate accordingly.
Okay.
We could actually put a major portion of our rollover funds to
His
the
treats come in a bag like that, so.
better idea to do.
Yeah, I think there is,
Well, the problem is we've already set the cutoff really high, because we were assuming that we wouldn't be getting more money. But that's fine, the cutoff will be the same, in terms of the cutoff score that we use. We could allocate that money, I can talk to Charlotte about maybe allocating more money for this next round, so like we can lower the cutoff. And a lot of them are resubmissions from last round anyway, so that might work too.
okay.
Just to make sure that we do it now, if we're anticipating spending more money on that.
So I think this is a good conversation to have with general counsel probably in January, which gives us a little bit of time to figure out exactly where we are now with the budget, what pocket of money would be available that would, you know, that we could reasonably allocate to other purposes, based on the desire of general counsel. And that could be a number of things. I think REAP, I think events, I think socials. I don't know how many people are interested in going to the National Days of Advocacy, but in NAGPS and SAGE, we'll both be doing Days on the Hill. And I know last year there were people who wanted to go, and the budget didn't allow for that. So
Yeah.
that's something we could keep in mind to figure out how many people wanted to go participate in that, because I think that is a powerful and worthy experience for people, and beneficial to graduate and professional students across the country. So, you know, I think there are a number of things that we could look at and make decisions on how we can spend those funds. For the retained fees, it is a set number, but the history of that number is really based on the fact that GPSC was pocketing, saving a bunch of money every year. And then when this was brought to the attention of administration, they took all those funds back, they cut them significantly. Now they hold them in account and give them to us year by year over like a 10-year period. But I think the point does still stand that if we are not spending those funds, they will revisit that and say there is not a need. And, you know, we do reject travel grants, REAP grants. We could host more socials, you know, have more to offer for events, advocacy, etc. So I think it's prudent to spend that money if there's the need, and I feel there is the need. So I think we should re-examine the budget over the next month.
So you wanna pull money from retained fees and put that into REAP?
I wanna take the money that has not been spent from the rollover of approximately 40,000, and then line items that have fallen under budget for various reasons. And I want to take that money and let General Counsel revisit that during the spring semester to see if there is a good purpose for that money, and if so, rebudget it, pass a budget that reflects that going forward, so we have that money available without having to go back, you know, for every little expense, but to say, hey, let's spend $5,000 more on GPSA week, and then give Patrice the opportunity to craft that event and that week of events really with that in mind, or let the Legislative Affairs and Finance Committee set the budget for international or for national travel to allocate, you know, to include more people, because it's not cheap to go to Washington D.C.
Did you look up flights or anything? You're looking up flights and hotels, right?
I have, and they're gonna send the hotel information.
When is that, by the way?
Let me pull up my calendar.
Can I make a suggestion? Could we all, each of us, come up with what we think would be like a good ask for each of our departments? So for like social, for
Yes.
events, for appropriations. And
That's
then
great.
David, at the next meeting, come up with like an estimate on how much we should have left by the end of the year that we can probably start spending extra on. And then that way we can maybe think about how we're gonna allocate that either at the next meeting or at the first January meeting before we bring it to General Council.
I think that's a great idea.
So I think after this round of REAP, I'll have a good estimate on what I'm looking at for the rest of the year. For that and travel POD
Yeah.
stuff.
And I would, you know, advocate that each group comes up with 2 budgets. Your dream budget, you know,
Good so far.
in reality, you know, we're not gonna allocate $1 million to GPSA week, but to pull off all the events that you really wanna do at the level, what would that look like? Is that an extra 10,000? And then maybe a more reality-based budget that would say, if I got a little bit more, here's what I could do, you know, and so one that's a stretch budget, and one that's, you know, centered more in reality based on the number of applications, the number of events, and kind of give us a range, because I think there is going to be some money in the budget, and I think there's a lot that we could do with it, and I would challenge people to be creative and see what we could do if we had, you know, more funding, because I know that during the beginning of the year we were very conservative on some of the estimates, which I think, given the history of overspending, was prudent. But I also don't want to shortchange all the good work that we do. So keep that in mind and kind of come up with what you need and what you want, budget, and then we'll, you know, I think we can present it all to General Counsel and see what they decide is the best use of our money and our efforts.
I think my only issue with that, I like that idea, but the only issue is that we don't wanna be spending or allocating the rest of what we expect to have in retained fees, cause I think we wanna have some room in there to like go over eventually when we end up going over or rolling over to the next year. So just like, I think I would
I don't think,
prefer to do more
I don't think the goal is to spend that whole
Yeah.
200,000, but even just what's in our budget this year
yeah.
and taking that money and actually utilizing it and dip into that.
Well, the retained fees is like 200,000 per year. So we got that for this year, and that's included in the budget.
Just to add about the retained fees, we got 239, and we have budgeted for 232 from that account. Like all our stipends, the admin expenses, everything comes from the retained account. So we have actually we'll be using almost more than 90% of the retained fees that we have got. So we got 239 and you will be using on 232. So we'll only have about 7,000 or something left over.
Okay.
But that doesn't include things that haven't been spent that are allocated currently, correct?
Right. So
No, that's
only
the budgeted.
That's
right. That's the
that's
budget.
budgeted.
Budget is for 232. We have 239 actuals.
Okay.
We may have extra, if you are not if you are not feeling like the stipend for some person for some reasons like a easy reps or something. So that would be left over that account, but everything else is kind of.
Well, I think there will be, I seriously doubt that starting January 1st, we have a full council and we're spending all of that money.
Yeah.
I know that my $35,000 allocation, I will not receive $35,000. So there should be, I don't know, 4,000 or 5,000
Left in that.
in that they have stolen from me. And let me repeat that for the record, the Dean of Students stole that money from me. And that should roll over, or could be reallocated. Because that money was stolen from me due to the dishonesty of the Dean of Students.
Yeah.
So to be really clear on that.
Does that number include the 40,000 rollover?
No.
No.
So
So 40,000 dollar was only confirmed last month.
But then
I don't know if it has come into our general account or just moved over to different accounts that we have.
okay.
I need to check.
well, we baseline up to September. I didn't say anything
So
for October.
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So I'll check
But
that.
Cindy said that's what's coming over.
Right,
then-
she said that more than a month ago. So I thought it will be there in the last month.
So has it
That'll
showed
be
up in the calendar?
35. That'll be 41, and then we were gonna use 6 of that. So
Right.
we're down to
So that is
35.
for the repay
Okay.
guys.
I mean, just come up with a number of what you think is reasonable for us to think about spending.
When we have 35,000, it's that to me sounds like a lot. That's how much you guys want to
That's
use.
a lot. If you split, 1,000 per department, I think we.
Also,
Money.
one more thing is we are supposed to receive funds from something like a bookstore and others, which we haven't received yet. So our overall budget includes these expected amounts. If in case for some reason we aren't able to secure those funds, then we need to this 40,000 will be the one that's covering it. So
Then
we may not.
wait till December for that though.
So yeah, we need at least we'll probably have to reach out to these bookstores and others.
I talked to Kendall about Res Life and the bookstore, and she said that money was set and that we would receive it, but it wasn't until partway through the year. I meet with her again on December 1st, so I will check with her at that time, and it's my understanding that we will receive that money, and if not, we will have to make some adjustments, but I think all signs point to we will. The alumni, I need to follow up with them because they do $1,000 for travel. I've talked with them. I'm going to ask them to do more than 1,000, but so far that 1,000 is not yet committed. I think everything else is addressed except for the, colleges, the deans. Which I think was always kind of, based in fiction. But I think there are some deans who would support travel or REAP. So we could have those meetings starting, you know, in the near future and see what's available, and then keep that in mind when increasing budgets if, you know, certain deans are willing to support the grant programs.
We need to be careful with like the money too because of the GA stuff. Remember we were talking about that? Cindy?
Yeah,
We
so
need to be careful with
I was
that.
gonna say that when we were done with this conversation, we should start, I was gonna ask you about those numbers.
Oh, I have October's numbers. I don't have like the full like.
Okay, cause remember when we were having that brunch thing, I brought up the idea that the fact that they're actually collecting, the way the SSFAB money works is it starts dispersing July 1st. And starting July 1st, they're getting their full stipend. When that money runs out, and it will likely run out, I don't know the estimate date, but you're looking at 9 months from when, 9 months from July 1st, which is, what is it, March? So it'll probably run out in March, and when that money runs out, that everything else comes out of GPSC.
What was written into the contracts for SSFAB, for the
Nothing.
GAs?
Nothing.
It's a lump sum.
It gets dispersed at $18.9 an hour until they hit 17.4. Once they hit 17.4, SSFAB starts paying, and that money comes out of our budget.
It
Most
comes out of
likely from
retained fees.
So essentially, we have to pay an additional 4 months out of our pocket. So we have to restructure how we want those GA shifts allocated, and I think it would be the same for both events and the president on how we want to do it. So I have a couple ideas, but that's something we keep in mind because we were looking. I think
SSFAB also pays for the benefits, the tuition, and healthcare for the GAs, right?
yeah.
ERE and tuition, yes.
Okay.
So they handle that portion, but that's a good question. We're gonna end up paying ERE as well.
Mm-hmm.
ERE, medical.
What about tuition?
Employee-related expenses.
We pay ERE as well. So once we hit March, we're paying. I think they're taking home $756. I think they're taking home $756 every 2 weeks. So
If they're paid $18.90 an hour for 52 weeks in the year, the total is $19,656.
okay, so 19,000 what?
656.
So we're basically going over $2,200 basically over the course of 3 or 4 months. And the problem is.
And then we also have ERE and the administrative expenses that pop up on the
So maybe
budget.
$3,000.
ERE is like almost 200, like
Around
196.58.
$5,000 per head
And then
For what?
for these all expenses that we have to.
But the thing is, in our budget, we assume that SSFAB's paying all that, which they're not. SSFAB money only pays up until 17.4. So
Why they're not even
this year
covering?
alone, well, correction, I need to find out if we can pull SSFAB money for the REAP director to pay for the travel director. Actually, no, never mind, that's not gonna work, because REAP is gonna run over anyways. Scratch that. Because Charlotte didn't take too much she only worked 5 hours a week in August. Like end of July, August, I think. But anyways, yeah, so you're looking for, at least for the travel grants director, we're looking at about $3,000 or $4,000 over.
Okay, but just to talk through this, so you're talking $17,400 in salary.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then, I'm just using a very round number, but $12,000 for tuition.
Yes.
So that puts us like 29,400. And then healthcare is like, what,
It falls under,
2,000?
I mean, it's like two categories, right? So ERE and includes, the healthcare.
ERE and then tuition benefits.
Those all kind of go together, so it's two items. It's two items that you put together, right?
Tuition's one, ERE is the other.
Oh, so three items. So there's stipend, tuition, and ERE.
ERE salaries, ERE benefits, and then tuition benefits.
Okay. Yeah, so you
That sounds like it's gonna be expensive, dude, cause it's gonna be like, tuition's like $800, $889 a person.
for 6 expenses, for 6 withdrawals, correct?
4.
4?
You mean 4 people or?
Withdrawals.
Right, so I think according to you have a graduate retainer that you're supposed to put in your budget, according to like FSO or whatever, whoever does that. They have this thing where they say you're supposed to put this much for a GA in your budget, and that will, it doesn't actually go to the GA, but it holds the placeholder. And I think they say that the actual benefits are withdrawn 6 payments. So it's not evenly distributed over the semester.
I think one thing to keep in mind is that because they are both graduating, that in likelihood they're gonna stop working probably at the end of the spring semester. So essentially we can save ourselves a month and a half that way.
But then do we need, I mean, when will we bring another person on?
It would be before they graduate, before the end of the semester, the spring semester, right?
Right, so then there is no gap, right? Like we're paying somebody.
That's true. You're right. Right. But then we would restructure that new contract to say that.
Yeah, I don't know that it's necessary to have travel and working 20 hours
Oh, yeah.
a week over the summer. I think it could easily be 10 hours a week, since there are no active grant rounds at that time.
Yeah.
And there's also an argument to be made to say they don't really need to be here all summer.
Mm-hmm.
There might be a gap.
Yeah. Like I said, we should restructure based on, SSFAB money, how we want to do it. Because it looks like at the end of the day, we're paying summer out of our pocket, summer comp out of our pocket.
Well, and we also should find out.
And I think our budget, I think that the idea is our budget is not, we don't treat our budget as fiscal year, even though we probably should start treating our budget as fiscal year.
We go academic, and that's why there's that nasty gap.
We do academic here. The way we treat it is academic, but the money from SSFAB, from all their sources is fiscal.
The Dean of Students is on like a fiscal year budget. That's where all of our stuff is like structured from, but we don't follow that. And that's why the case hurts.
But don't a lot of university departments go July to July? I mean, 'cause that's what our budget is based on, right? Yes, no?
Yes.
Yes, but I think the way we treat, because the thing is, we have a turnover in May,
Oh,
right? And that's how, and we set our budget before that turnover.
okay.
Which I think
I
is
see what you're
why,
saying.
why I'm saying that we treat it like it's a academic year.
I see what you mean.
Okay, so there are a number of things that need to be addressed budget-wise. Next EB meeting, and then definitely some proposal for GC in January.
Okay.
So, we will move on. If I can find where we were.
Number 6, GPSC service project.
Perfect.
So, I mean, I brought it up last time I talked about, I contacted the, what are they called, the food bank,
Mm-hmm.
and they basically want people to help out at the warehouse, and I think that might be a good idea, it's just that we need to book ahead in order to do that, because they're like booked weeks in advance, 'cause I think it would be a good bonding session to at least have a group of us go to do that. But then remember Gaskin said to wait up for, food pantry, and, we're scheduling a meeting soon, hopefully, right? I'm joining you in that meeting.
In theory, yes.
In theory, we have a meeting next week. In theory.
Yeah.
Say it again.
Huh?
So say it one more time.
In theory.
The last time was my fault, or my cat's fault, needing to go to the vet, so
Well, I mean, I've been trying to schedule that meeting, and,
I know.
and then I talked to Megan. Megan said you were interested in that meeting, so I was like gonna tag along.
She brought me into it, and I was like, well, Dustin was the one
Yeah.
talking about this in the meeting, so, but since I'm social chair, I mean, I'd be happy to be involved in it. And so it was
I mean,
kind of an interesting
it's up to
little,
you.
no, I'll be
I mean,
there,
more
I can,
people in that meeting would be better.
I agree,
And
but
then-
it was just kind of funny how that,
Yeah, and then what are we doing about that gift idea? Are we moving?
I've dropped the ball on it, with everything else going on. I love the idea of it. Realistically, all of my projects are coming up against me, and I don't have time for organizing it. And I'm really trying to spend some time organizing, we'll talk about this in a bit, but trying to organize some sort of social media effort to get grads talking about the tax issues.
Okay,
And I think at the moment that's more pressing.
that's fine, I just wanted to.
I don't know,
follow up on-
I really liked the idea, and so I'm gonna put together a proposal so that maybe next year
Okay,
that would be a little bit more feasible to kind of organize.
yeah, I think also like next year, maybe I'll think about how we can approach doing like a Thanksgiving event next year. We weren't able to do one this year, but I think planning ahead would help,
Yeah.
you know.
I think last year they did the North Campus breakfast in November around this time. I don't know if that's the event you're thinking about.
No, just like community
Just
service
kind of like
event
something.
for Thanksgiving, I think that's like a really good time to be doing a community service event.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that we weren't able to do one this semester, but I think that's something that we should do. So we'll figure it out. Maybe
I know
next year.
that, Nick had previously suggested Ben's Bells.
Oh, yeah.
But not as like a, well, you suggested Ben Spells.
I did, as well.
And he said he liked it, as a community service event, and we could do that. That's definitely doable, we can do that whenever.
Yeah, that's like,
But
I think any Saturday, you know, we just kinda give them a heads up of how many people are coming.
I was just thinking of like
Nope.
as a community service event, as a Thanksgiving event. That doesn't quite work. Maybe next semester I'll start planning this over the break,
Dude.
so that we'll have better dates and stuff. I think I got busy. Everybody kind of got busy with other stuff going on, not just school, GPSC, but other school stuff too.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's fine if we wait on the gift idea. I think that's a great idea for future. But we didn't have a lot of time to plan it, and I think that will take a lot of coordination. So I think we don't try to do it this year.
Yeah, my department, it does that. Usually, they email us to if we wanna give something, so we drop it in a.
Yeah, so the College of Optics does a white elephant
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
for their
That's
Christmas
fun.
holiday. So like if you have a gift, you bring it to the office and they'll like store all the gifts and then they'll bring it out.
And then do a big white elephant exchange.
Do a big white elephant exchange.
That's kind of fun.
I mean, that's something that we could do for.
That could be fun for general council to
Yeah,
do a
that would
white
be
elephant
fun.
exchange.
We could do-
I'd be interested to see what people bring.
Okay,
Next.
so next we have discussion and plan to update the 2025 strategic plan and end of year report, which we have allocated 20 minutes to. Given there are 30 minutes left in the meeting, it might be advantageous to prioritize the general council meeting, the upcoming general council meeting. And
Are
make
you
sure we
asking
have
for a motion
our
then?
ducks in a row there. That's my opinion. I don't know how hyped up you all are to talk about the 2025 plan.
I think that could maybe wait to the next meeting and put that as the first order of business.
I do wanna say something real quick about it though. I feel like we need to figure out how to utilize it. I think it's written, it's there, and nobody, there's no plan on utilizing it. I think it's just sort of, from what it sounds like, it's more like a vision from the old council. So last council has a vision, and then, you know, they write it down on paper, and then we're gonna have a vision, and we're gonna write it down on paper, maybe in February, March. So I think that's something that we should think about too, like, not just to update it, but like figure out what do we wanna do with it.
Yeah. I mean, that's the hard thing about having a strategic plan that's for several years in advance, that every year the council changes and people have a different idea of what that plan should look like.
So maybe it might be better to be written in the beginning, like over the summer.
Sure.
Update over the summer as opposed to.
Well, so maybe maybe we should have a brief conversation, like a 5-minute conversation about utilizing, if everyone has read the previous document.
I did at some point.
And how we think we can incorporate those ideas and the vision of the previous councils going into the next semester. Because I think there are some decent ideas in here and some good goals. I think some of it is silly. That said, there's still some meat on the bones. So, you know, what can we utilize from it? What would this executive board prioritize? And then how can we get there? So it has two themes, the internal and the external. I don't think those are divided very well, but I think the focus is fitting for how we're structured. The philosophy is student-focused advocacy. Starts with aligning with the 2025 vision for ABOR, which I think, let me rephrase that. I don't agree that we should align with the 2025 vision of ABOR. I think looking at their past, there's very little that we do align with them on, and so thinking that we go that far into the future, lockstep with an organization that has not done us many favors, is a talking point. I mean, really, the announcement of the Arizona Board of Regents last week is about the first thing I agree with ABOR on in the last 2 years.
You mean the one in the leadership meeting?
Which they addressed during the full board meeting, but not very much.
So how about instead of trying to talk about how we're gonna update this, maybe we talk about come to the next EB meeting with things that we think are really important that we can make progress on throughout the rest of the year, and then kind of, take a look at those. And like I said, I think this is better if we update this, you know, over the summer with the new group and what their vision is, right, as opposed to trying to do
Mid-year.
this in the mid-year, yeah. So.
And
we
the
have
first
these
thing you
goals.
said, I agree with you, because I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
So one of the big goals is to increase the budget.
So then I would move to table this discussion until the next meeting.
I second.
Okay. Hearing no objections?
But could we all like kind of go through and like pick some things that we think we can start doing this year? Because I think there's some of them
For the next meeting,
for the
right?
next
So
meeting.
that's part of tabling it, is that everybody's gonna look at that
Okay.
aspect. What we think our takeaways from the current written plan is that we can utilize. Cause I agree with you on that.
Yeah, and I would add, you know, not just what we like, because a lot of this, in my opinion, is talking points. increasing graduation rates, increasing, retention rates.
There's
Yada
no
yada,
actual
without
like
something
solid
there.
plan. Yeah.
No,
You know,
that's.
We can all wish for a leprechaun and a jackpot too, but it doesn't do much good without an idea of how we address those issues. You know, increasing the budget is great in theory. Is it needed? Is it realistic? Where are those revenue sources? You know, and so to think about specifics, and that's definitely worth revisiting as an executive board and then with general counsel, to try to achieve the goals that we want to from this, and then also to create a document that can go into the future. Maybe not as many goals, but more tangible goals. So we will definitely revisit that in December.
Yeah, one of the things I'm really looking at is one of the points is assessing relationship of mentoring graduate to graduate student success. And it's like, okay, well, it's on a plan, but we have to start assessing, right? We have to start assessing, and then we figure out how we can improve that. So it's one of those things like, okay, let's get that survey out, right?
Yeah. All right, so it's been moved and seconded. There's no vote on it.
Yeah, hearing no objections, motion
One,
passes.
2, 3, 4, 6 votes.
Are we doing them by votes or by no objection?
Actually, there should be votes, like no
It
objection,
not.
6 votes.
There's some in which there's votes, some in which there aren't. Any clarity on
I
that?
forget what it's called. That's a saying.
It's a vote by consensus,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, so plan for future general council meetings. Meeting schedule, we've already hashed out. But definitely that should be announced tomorrow. Future agenda items, where are we with the number of items that have been suggested and for the meeting tomorrow?
Tomorrow, what things are going on? I think the main point is just that we are going to show them that how Shilpita and Sean, they are trying to set a petition regarding Title IX, and
Well, that's David doing that petition, right?
We drafted that thing.
Yeah.
yeah, but they are working on it. I do. No, he's not working on it.
No, we drafted the statement.
Yeah,
for the
we
petition.
so legislative
that's
full
really-
assembly, legislative and finance.
So that really be
committee
David's update as
yeah.
opposed to Sean and Shilpita's update for that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and then
Right.
For committee? For
what?
the LAF committee, yeah.
Well, that's one of the things, she put it on the agenda as one of the items on the agenda. And that's actually one of the things I was looking at the ABAR agenda from last week, and I feel like we should do something more similar to that than start, because I know historically we've always done like old business, new business, and then, but I think that we should do reports, right, and then we start voting on things in those reports, right, so like appropriation should not be a separate agenda item, it should be in under the report section.
Okay, so you're saying
Right.
to put
I feel like we should start
Title
doing that.
IX and Title IX under Legislative Affairs and Finance Committee, and then GPSC Election Rules and Amendment under Dwelling Dogs Committee?
Yeah.
You're saying like that?
It would be under the general, there, so
Yeah,
you've
so
got
there will
all
be
the
no-
reports, so that, those would be line items for those
Yeah, so
areas.
there will be no repetition, because
Right,
whatever happens up above, then the report is saying, oh, we said this before, it's one and the same thing.
yeah, I'd say unless there's a vote that has to be made.
Yeah,
Maybe.
that can be into old or new business.
Wait, did you put governing docs on here?
Yeah.
Oh shoot, I forgot about that.
GPSC Election Rules Amendment in Constitution, you already send them the same day.
Yeah, I know, but I forgot to add it onto the,
Okay, you can resend.
no, I'm just adding it onto the absentee ballot, I forgot.
Okay.
So, just give me one. Yeah, you guys can, let me do this real quick. Yeah, so like, yeah, we don't really have much on the agenda besides those things. Appropriations committee isn't gonna be ready until the next meeting. Just because travel hasn't gotten their grants judged yet. We're postponing that till tomorrow, and then,
And
We
the
haven't
next
got
is
to the
Robert Rule training, it's going to be next year, during first meeting.
First meeting.
And what do you mean by goals?
So the goal setting that's
Oh,
been
a
happening.
game thing, so are we doing a game?
I haven't been there at all, so I'm not one to ask.
Well, we said we were gonna revisit it with them. And we haven't done that.
Tomorrow would not be the day.
Do you think we're gonna get,
I'm even not sure if we are going to get quorum tomorrow.
that's what I was wondering.
What about
Which,
action
by
on
the way,
tax
Megan
proposal?
told me this morning to remind everybody that even if we're not gonna get quorum, if it gets canceled, someone needs to go sit in that room,
Yeah, I know that.
so we don't get charged.
So
Just
we
as
are-
a reminder.
Yeah, she emailed me
Perfect.
about this.
She said she was going to.
Yeah, so I just said that don't worry, we'll be there for 15 minutes at least.
So do we have to sit there or do we get to use the
Somebody
projector too?
has to actually be in the room
For
for 15
Can we
minutes.
use the projector?
I don't know.
No? I'll sit there, I'll put like TNT on, watch some basketball, I'm serious. It's
Like, as
bigger
long as I
than-
could use the projector, we're good.
Yeah, I'll do it.
It's a
If I-
meeting, you can say that it's, what do you
This is a
say?
viewing party?
No,
This is
no.
a professional.
Professional viewing party analysis
No,
of the game.
Marie, what's that specific term is where we all get together, eat together, talk together, so that we will be not strangers, but
Bonding, I don't know. Leadership training.
Alright, let's move on to the next topic.
a retreat,
A retreat.
Well, we'll all be there to find out if we have
Quorum, yeah.
quorum,
Yeah,
so.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just
So
wondering if
that's
you
it.
already had a sense of that or not.
Yeah.
Okay.
People
That's it.
said they would, but I mean, we struggled to have quorum last time.
But it also, it might be a case too where, like me, I know that there's a couple other people who could do Tuesdays but can't do
Yeah.
Thursdays, who might actually come. And so we may make quorum just by the people who
But there are people
normally
who
can't go on
can't do
Thursdays.
Tuesdays.
Oh, I know, but we might kind of even out as a result, so hopefully.
Yeah. Okay, I'm done with all four.
So tax proposal,
Yeah, the tax proposal thing is the one that we send you, Sean, and that's it. We didn't add in agenda because Sean wanna see what's happening up, if it's.
Because the House passed it, but the Senate hasn't, so.
Yeah, so
So
do you
here's-
want to
Here's the
act-
deal, we can't wait, we need to start saying, we need students to start talking now. And so if we wait on it, graduate students aren't gonna talk. Like, the reason grad students get screwed over so much is because they don't talk about these issues, they don't make noise. I was talking to my parents on Friday night about it, they had no clue that was happening. Well, the
No,
only people
that's
who
why
know
we
this is
sent
happening
that
is grad
email
students.
to Jesse so that.
right, but you didn't even give me 12 hours before you had the clock ticking that you were going to send it out, and that statement has a number of factual problems.
Yeah.
Grammatical problems. I've asked for that statement for over 2 weeks. I get it at 10 o'clock at night, and by 6 o'clock the next morning, if I don't respond, the bomb is detonating. That's not fair.
No, it's not.
There happened to be a medical emergency,
Yeah, I read that.
and I mean, I responded that morning because I was up and at 'em, and when my boyfriend was literally purple, that took a back seat. I thought about leaving to go get my computer and decided that was not a good idea. And the reality was the house was moving on it
Mhm.
that day. So, you know,
Nothing was
thinking that we could do anything meaningful in a 2 or 3 hour window was not realistic. The idea is good. We need to call for action. We need to call Congress. We need to get the word out. The House was gonna pass what they were gonna pass. I think anybody tracking the issue could have told you that. The Senate, there are a number of Republican senators who have not committed to supporting it. We have a chance to affect things there. Then we have to get to the committee. Because whatever comes from the House and the Senate bills, they have to come up, they have to do it in conference. Whatever they negotiate in conference is gonna go to Trump. That's gonna get signed, because whatever happens to graduate students, the bulk of the tax plan is gonna be intact. And they have to have a legislative win. They haven't had one yet. So if they can cut taxes, if they can reduce the number of brackets, graduate students are not a blip on the radar in this thing, which is both good and bad. We're not the focus. So we could fall either way. We could change it nationally, and we could get out of that mess. Or we could be part of it and literally no one will care because Democrats will be kicking and screaming about cuts to other things, and Republicans will be celebrating successes of other things, and none of it has to do with graduate students. So we do have an ability, but it's like this weird gray area. And I think we need to be calling now. I mean, they're saying they want to pass this before Christmas. So General Council meets one more time.
So you're saying to, that general council votes that we should send email and then we are going to send email?
No,
Or what?
but they need to be aware of what the game plan is. There needs to be a game plan.
So,
Okay, it can be just a point of information tomorrow, because I did not add anything in agenda.
I think one of the things, I mean, it could be under reports, for sure. But I think one of the things that Sean brought up was like, you know, that there are, as of last Wednesday, they were going to make changes to it in the Senate. And so we weren't sure what was gonna happen with that. What we wanted to do was we wanted to tackle the House one, because that one, they decided they were gonna vote on it Thursday. And I think earlier in the week, they decided they were gonna vote on it. And so that, you know, that was our opportunity at that meeting. I mean, I think it was the week before when they proposed it, they had scheduled the meeting, you know, for the week, for that last Wednesday.
They proposed it on, the House proposed it on the 2nd and voted on it on the 16th. And there's a 2-week gap there. Cause I sent information on what, like the 4th?
I don't remember. I mean, I got probably email the week
It's
before.
possible you sent it just to Sean and.
I don't think I sent it to everybody, but I think which I was, a couple days late on it, but then again, we have a whole committee and team,
That's supposed to tackle those.
and I know Sean sent information and came to General Council because it was on his radar. So I don't want to discredit that our team is tracking these issues and doing it, and they wrote the statement, and largely the statement was good. I mean, it was a call to action, and that's what we need, and whether it's perfect, doesn't matter.
I mean, you saw the blurb, right? The petition blurb?
The petition on Title IX?
No, we're talking about the tax right now, the tax reform. The thing that Sean drafted and sent out.
So I think one thing the legislative team in general needs to understand is that when something like this happens, they need to come to us in general with like, here's the way we think it should be approached. And then if we disagree, if we have a thought on it, we can. But largely, a lot of us don't know the best approach to those statements or those things. You would be a good person for them to talk to. But if they could come up with an approach in the first place, then we're not doing a whole back and forth on just concept, and we're actually tackling, I don't know. I've had a lot of thoughts of this on this over the last week.
Well, and okay, how many of you have reached out to Congress? So issuing a statement saying reaching out to Congress does exactly what moves that is someone looking you in the face and saying, no, seriously. You know what happens when you call a member of Congress? And the reality is you probably don't. Who do you talk to? Who answers the phone?
Staffer.
An intern.
Mm-hmm.
Or so you're talking about like a 19-year-old kid from the U of A working right down the street. Representative Culver's office, this is intern so-and-so. They don't usually fess up to being an intern, but you know, how can I help you? I want to talk to you about the tax proposal, okay? Maybe they have a real pen. Most likely they have an air pen because that's how much it matters. So does your talking point have to be perfect? No. They're literally going to put you down on a tally sheet saying, we got a
People
call
called for and against.
on this issue, yay or nay. You could call 10 times and do like a French accent. You would be marked down 10 times as like some French person's calling about this issue. It's not
Okay,
this
do you think
intimidating.
I can also call.
What?
Being an international, I can also call.
You can
Well, yeah, because
absolutely
the
call.
tax affects you.
And you don't have to say that you're an international student. You can say, I'm a student at the University of Arizona and I live in your district. They're going to ask you for your address. Give them your address. You live in the district. No one's going to pull you up and see if you're a felon or if you've been adjudicated incompetent. I mean, they're not going to track it to see if you're actually a voting
Constituent,
person.
yeah.
Like, they're going to ask you for your address. They're going to plug it in and hope that they can shift you off to another district. Say, no, I'm sorry, you actually live in McSally's district. Click. That's it. That's all they track. But what they are tracking, when I worked in the office of an elected official, we used to say if the phone rang 30 times on a single issue, it was an emergency. We have 30 members of GPSC.
And what they do if there's an emergency, like what they do for that cases.
Oh, the rep's actually going to know about it. Otherwise, it goes out on like a weekly report saved as a PDF that like you get the weekly report from intern X and you go like, okay, yeah, the phone rang. I heard the phone ringing. I don't really care what the phone was ringing about because it's not an emergency. When it's an emergency, staff is actually alerted. The district's on fire. They actually care about this issue. The member is notified. Hey, we got like 35 calls on this issue. Do you know that people are actually paying attention to this? They have to at least then think about it. Otherwise, business goes on. There are babies to kiss, there are hands to shake, there are dinners to attend, and no one cares about what is being voted on. So the idea of like calling Congress is this like big scary animal until you realize that it is not that meaningful.
Until lots of people do it.
Until lots of people do it, and then it gets on the radar. And when you have a university in your district or in your town, you have to then think, maybe they're going to be pissed. Maybe they're going to come after me.
Mm-hmm.
So ring the phone, write the letters. I mean, the form letter is like the cheapest thing you can do. It's literally 3 clicks of a button. Do that if nothing else. Like, I would hope that you could like write something in the beginning so it doesn't just hit the form letter, you know. Oh God, I've read this opening paragraph 10 times. Just put something like, hi, I live in your district and I'm excited to reach out. It could be anything stupid. It doesn't matter. Edit the form letter, send it off. Call the number. Call the number back the next day because interns don't usually work back to back. They'll think you're 2 different people. Give your address off by a number. You count as multiple people. Because the reality is, if you care about it, the district does care about it, and that's what's important. And so when we send these things out saying call Congress, people don't do it. They say the number 1 reason why people vote for the first time is because someone that they know asked them to. And if I come to you and say, hey, my friend is running for the state house, and he's a really great guy, and it's a tough race, will you please vote for my friend? The chances that you do that are good. Because you have some reason to do it. Not because of a radio, not because of an email, but because someone you know looked you in the eye and said, this matters to me. So in that sense, we need to look every member of General Council in the eye and say, this matters to me, this matters to you, this matters to us, this matters to everyone. This is actually why we are here.
And I do have more on this, but I'll save it for the officer report. So if we wanted to move on.
Yes. Yeah, and I would just say the tax issue is probably one of the biggest ones that we're gonna have this year.
I'll email Sean and say him to be there, and then I'll say him to talk about this thing in legislative and affairs report.
That would be perfect.
Yeah, I'm just going to email him right away.
It would be
And I
also,
think most probably he'll be there. He was there
I think so
last
too.
time also.
Yeah, did you put it so that she'll be there to come too? Her class was at like that.
She will. She will. Oh my goodness! I was supposed to put all. We have to table this in back because she usually have class. So by the time she arrives, it's like.
Yeah.
Okay. Mhm.
That's what I was saying, like, did you put it like?
Yeah, I again put it above. Oh, we'll table it on last. Yeah.
and it would be good to have a idea of what's coming down down the pipe for the state ledge, because they're
I
gonna.
think he resent one email, Sean. Next day he resent. I have to see what he said.
Okay, I'll check, because I don't know that I saw that one, but yeah, they're gonna kick off in January, and, especially if Avor is, drawing a line in the sand. I mean, we have leverage there.
Yeah.
We've definitely got some leverage there, and that should be interesting. I will turn on Avor in a minute. I will turn on the state legislature even faster. Because they both screw students time and again.
Yeah.
So the fact that those two are going at it is awesome. We've got nothing to lose, and we have a real voice in that. And I'm going to invite the student regent from the U of A. Well, I have invited him, and I talked to him at the
Leadership meeting last Wednesday.
at the regent's retirement dinner the following night, quite a bit, and about engaging with students, and particularly GPSC, for the student reports and updates for ABOR. So hopefully we can include him as kind of a regular agenda item in the spring. Probably not every meeting, but maybe once a month. So we will go on to the next one, which is the committee reports. Appropriations, I know you said that you wouldn't have anything ready for
It's the
tomorrow.
same thing. So we have, as of today, Janelle said that we have 150 scores that need to come in.
Mhm.
She's extending the deadline till tomorrow. I don't think that's enough time. I think she'll end up probably extending it further because otherwise, I mean, the committee's gonna have to judge that many. And same appropriations, we got our assignments last week, but because we can't meet next week or this week and next week, so correction, we can meet this week, so we're gonna meet next week because we don't have enough people saying they're able to come tomorrow, so we're gonna meet next week and we'll do those judge those applications by then, so we'll have basically what we'll know what we're reviewing by next week.
Okay.
And then also, so we have some ideas on creating a strategic plan for our committee, and also like ways we can update the way the travel grants are run, and research and project grants are run. I think I'm gonna reach out to ASU's travel grant director some more, because we spoke with her last week, and it seems, well, we spoke with her last week, and it seems like, you know, the system they're using is better, and they're actually doing the stuff that I was advocating for from the very beginning, on the way to like divide up the grants, the way to like, you know, judge the grants, so I think we'll make a lot of those changes, and hopefully maybe look into like combining the two positions into one. My only concern with that is if we continue to grow, we will want two directors, but as it currently stands, we really don't need two. But yeah, that's about it.
Okay, and I was playing phone tag with, I don't know her title, but ASU's grant person to
Director.
talk about Zoom grants.
Director of travel.
Yeah, and so I didn't think that was the time, anyway,
That was director of travel.
that was like their internal,
That
So-
was-
No, Alyssa, that was at the,
no, and I was, I don't know how to say this name, SRAVANI. VPIA, VP of Internal Affairs is what I think. But I was playing phone tag with her to talk about Zoom grants. So yeah, I think that we should follow up on those discussions, and I think they're perfectly willing to talk to us about that, and I do think their system works pretty well, so it's worth looking into. I also say that, like, you know, places like Pima County give out millions of dollars in grants with like a team of like 5 people, so.
For what?
Well, for all sorts of things, right? Like Pima County does social service grants, municipal grants to cities for transportation.
How to apply for that?
Zoom grants.
We can find something that we can bring for grad students in that.
Possibly. You either have to be a jurisdiction or a nonprofit to apply for most of them, so we would have to go through the foundation. But yeah, we can do that, and that's something that I want to talk to our development administrator about. Not so much Pima County grants, but other grants for nonprofit organizations. But that would require coordination through the foundation. But we have that ability for those grants. But yeah, something like Zoom grants or a system makes it a lot more feasible to administer large sums of money with fewer administrators, which I think would be a prudent use of SSFAB money.
As David always says that we need some scholarships as a grad and everything. We can find ways in which grad students can have scholarships from that Pima County funds that you're mentioning. Is it possible or no?
I don't know about Pima County. I mean, I'd have to dig into some of their different categories. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but there are other grants that what I consider low-hanging fruit, like Desert Diamond Casino. By law, they have to give out a certain percentage of their money, which is a ton of money. And one of their priority issues is research and education. And
Yeah,
it's not a ton of money, but I think we could easily get between $2,000, $5,000 a year with a 1 to 2 page application that consists largely of our name, address, and a couple paragraphs about what that money would go to support. Walmart does a community grant where every store in the service area, which in our service area is like 35 stores, they can give up to $2,500 per store based on the decision of the store manager.
For example, the
For
gift
education.
thing that you are mentioning, it can come out from that.
yeah, good.
Yeah, I think there are opportunities to get sponsors for events, to say, you know, hey, we'll put a banner up with your logo on it, and when people come to orientation, they will know that you exist. There are all sorts of things that we could do, I think, that would bring revenue in from grants. We have to go through the foundation. I talked to Dr. Gaskin about this recently, and he's not into the idea. He thinks that we should send letters out to graduate students who have graduated. My feeling on that, and I'm be curious to know what you all think. I get a ton of letters from my undergraduate, right, for supporting this, that. They send magazines, pamphlets, brochures, whatever, asking for money like every single month. I get it from the colleges that I attended the programs, from the university, from the Alumni Association, from every cut, right? And like, same's true with our foundation. They're sending out beautiful, you know, 4-color mailers, enticing you to give all the time. I struggle to see why a graduate student would choose to send their check to GPSC as opposed to
The alumni
to their
association.
department,
Yeah.
the college, the alumni association, all of these various folks who are reaching out. And I don't know that people have that strong of a connection to GPSC. I know that Carol and Megan have been working on coming up with a list of people who have received a travel grant and then reaching out to those people specifically and saying, hey, you benefited from this. Is this something you would contribute to? I can see that nexus with a targeted list of people who have received that support, because I know that made a big difference to a lot of people. But just blanket mailing graduate and professional students, mailing is expensive. I mean, in campaign fundraising, when you do the budget for mail, on First Touch Mail, it's a $0 gain. So any revenue, any dollars that come in are offset by the dollars that you spent to send that out to everyone. You do it to grow the list, and on Second Touch, Third Touch, it increases. I don't know that's a good use of our money, to spend $10,000 on a mail piece hoping to raise $10,000, as opposed to doing some of the grants, which the only cost is our time, but we have a development associate who we're already paying. We have committees, we have members, we have the talent here. It doesn't cost anything to submit the grant if we get it, even if it's a small grant.
And usually
It's
I feel that grad students need at least 10 years to be on the base to actually start donating something, because they're in the prime time. They'll not like graduate last year and start donating
That
this
said,
year.
this is a 25-year-old organization, so I don't think it's unreasonable to start thinking about how that could be an effective strategy. But I think you're right.
Thinking back to your undergraduate,
turnaround.
are you going to give to your program,
No,
to
but
the
I'm
university,
broke.
or to the undergraduate?
That was
Government.
my thought. I would love to.
I haven't had any feelings towards giving anything at this point.
I've been saying this kind of for a while now, but I think that you really need to get before you give.
Yeah.
Because, and that's why Janelle's strategy of like going for people who've already received travel grants to
I
ask them
agree.
for you, because if you've received something in return,
Then
you're
you
more
see the
likely-
value.
You see the value, and you're more
Value,
likely to
yeah.
give back.
Mhm.
So I think that we starting off, you do this way where you find external sponsors, you apply for different grant programs that we can use, and then later on, if we want to continue to grow this, obviously you're going to have to reach out to alumni, and that's a really good way to do
Yeah.
it.
And I think with a targeted list, grant recipients, former board members. If you were the president of GPSC 20 years ago, you may see the value in that and think
Yeah.
fondly on that and have a few bucks to
Feelings
get.
for that.
Can this be a more extensive conversation in the appropriations committee so that we can kind of,
Yes.
because I'd love for Patrice to get a moment to
Yes.
actually bring up what she needs to bring up at some point.
Just my suggestion though, like, let's have this as a group instead, because appropriations already has like a lot of things.
Oh, I know, but
in the future, in terms of those
Yeah.
individual grants, so I think that maybe we continue this conversation as a group.
okay.
Yeah, and I think the point is well taken that we are already over time and need to move on. But yeah, I do agree that this is probably,
A group
it's
effort.
an uncharted territory and probably warrants all hands on deck,
Okay.
and appropriate attention at the appropriate time. And so, where are you gonna chime in on our agenda?
I'll yield some of my time
Okay.
in social, during social chair reports.
Okay, yeah, because I do want to make sure that gets in. So social and marketing is next. Are you done with appropriations? I'm sorry to cut you off.
I finished like 10 minutes ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll throw out what we have even in my.
Well, I know it went off
with
the other direction, so I just want to make sure you had.
Marie, go ahead.
A lot of it would also cover social committee. We had a really successful event. We had 94 people overall, and spent under 600 still at No Anchovies. They've got a new deal going with us where it's per head, and special pizzas are $6.50. We did the $5 for just pepperoni and cheese. Went really well. As far as marketing goes, and I've only briefly talked to this about Anand, and I'm kind of heading it because I think this is something that could get stuck in committee, and I don't know how you guys can see this, but I'm looking at creating a social marketing campaign, getting people talking about the issue of taxes. So this is the hashtag I've come up with. If you guys have something more clever or catchier, so keep 117, so keep 117, and then having kind of facts about the benefits of graduate school on kind of commercial endeavors, on the economy. This is where I'm going to need some help, is I can do some brief research, but as all of us know, this is a terrible time of year for this to be coming up to actually be able to put a sufficient amount of work on it. So when I have this kind of together, I'm gonna mail this out, blast it out to the reps hopefully tonight, and say, I need information from you on what you think graduate students will share. And then we'll start putting these out on Instagram. I'm going to create, using this kind of template, I'm going to create one of those banners that you can put onto your Facebook profile. I'm going to create ones for graduate students as well as parents of graduate students, because I think the only way that this will be effective is if people beyond the graduate student population say, hey, I identify with that. Hey, my child will be affected by that. Hey, I was a graduate student and I know what a struggle that already is. So I'm trying to come up with good ways of doing that. Any suggestions would be more than helpful. I don't know that we need to hash it out in this meeting. Email me.
What's the point of 117?
117 is the part of the tax code that they're trying to remove. It's the section of the tax code that if they remove it, our waivers would become taxable income.
Yeah, I think we should work on the hashtag for something a bit more generic, but I love the idea of the hashtag and the campaign to
I wonder if you're gonna target.
have multiple facets. I mean, I think that's awesome.
If we're gonna target parents, what I think would be more beneficial though, if you tie this in with that provision that we use tax credit for tuition.
So
So
here's.
when you pay tuition, then you get tax credit relief on that, and that's also removed, right? That part's also being removed, as far as I remember.
What do you mean tax credit relief
So like
on?
if I pay tuition, right, if I pay fees to the university, I can get tax credit for that. Basically, I get deduction in my tax bill for paying tuition, for paying rent to dorms, or whatever.
I think that's more of an issue for undergraduate
But if
parents who
you're
are actually paying for.
But there are people who pay tuition.
Grad students.
Here's my concern with doing that, because there's a lot of things we could talk about. The student loan deduction that they're removing. There's lots of different ways that they're affecting education. This is the one that will increase our tax.
Yeah, but if you're targeting parents.
No, that's
right?
just a side fringe.
Well,
I want it
I'm saying that
available
if
to.
If you're targeting parents, then that you would
Dude,
associate something.
you're
that they
missing the whole point of it. The whole point is just like putting it out there, so people are like, hey, this is affecting people. Like, I get your point. I get it. Social media is not supposed to be that complex.
That's not complex. I'm saying
I feel like you're making
You-
it
okay,
so
so-
complex.
so-
I'm saying it's
no,
with
I
something that
see-
people
Dustin is
will
just
also
saying to
take it,
increase the number
right?
of
Okay,
people.
and again,
that
I
get
don't want to
targeted.
debate it here, so please, like, email me, tell me your thoughts, tell me what you're thinking, if you have a better hashtag. I came up with a whole list of potential hashtags. I felt that Keep 117 would probably be the most catchy and most specific to the kind of issue, and the most shareable in terms of people starting to recognize it if it starts to get shared. So those are all the things that I was thinking at from a marketing standpoint, because it does need to be catchy. It can't just be like, grad students need money. You know, that's a little bit too broad. So any thoughts that you have on it? I'm not going to continue to eat up at our time, but I do want to hear what you have to say as far as what you might want to incorporate in that. Now, considering time constraints and kind of like narrowing down that goal, I'd rather keep it narrow than broader and then maybe add on to it. I have reached out to someone that we met at from ASU, and I've sent a email to the NAU grad council to see if they would be interested in this as well, and I would be happy to change the colors to their school so that they can start sharing that. and make use of it, because I think that the more grad students talk about it, the less this gets buried under in all of the reporting of the other issues, because I feel like that issue has been talked about. I feel like the student loan one has been talked about a lot, but there's only like these random little opinion papers that graduate students only seem to be seeing in terms of the 117. And I think if most people knew about it, they'd be appalled, because it's basically, you know, the thing I put out is that I take home, this year I'm going to take home $16,500 between my stipends and working at Pima. And according to this tax code, if it were in place right now, half of that would go back to the government.
I mean, but again, you have more grad students, there are more grad students who
Can
pay
we
tuition.
keep the
Then
discussion for
get
later time?
benefits.
Yeah, again, let's,
8:15 we
no
are
more
after.
debating, okay. I know, I take your point, but
The one time the nun speaks. I love it.
I
I love it.
okay, I feel like we've already talked about legislative affairs and finance and
Yes,
others.
we have.
We are done.
Okay,
Okay, and
we'll talk about governing docs.
Governing
first.
docs.
Something else?
We're making good progress though. I like
we're
it. We're making good progress.
we're moving on. So we will meet about that. Plenty of work to do. Everyone knows.
When's the next meeting for government docs? Is that next week? Or we do Monday?
Yeah.
Aren't we having, okay, Monday.
I
I was thinking it's 4th December.
And so we brushed over the social marketing to have Patrice chime in. So
Since for GPSA week, I just have like a vote from like each of you basically right now. Since you know it's already been approved that we have so much for the week, it doesn't really need to be reapproved, but I want everybody's opinions on the barbecue. I know I've already talked to both of you guys. We have about $8,000 for the barbecue that week, and I was wondering if I can just get like a yes, no, I'm completely offended like to not have the barbecue from you guys in this room, and then I'll come back with more suggestions.
Is that barbecue was a success last year? I don't
It came
think so.
out to like $13 per student that rolled through, or something like that.
Which is
where-
how many
No,
students?
means how many students come over and
She-
actually had that
She's getting
barbecue?
there. Do you know about how many? I'll do the math on that.
Did I give you that?
You said it was
$9,000?
9,000, right? Yeah, I
We
don't.
basically had like half of the people we.
So about
Sorry. Yeah, I
700,
should've-
700 students? Does that
Way
sound about
less,
right?
That
way
comes
less
down
than
to the
that.
math.
Okay, way less than
We
that.
have way less than that.
Yeah.
And were a lot of those undergrads?
Yeah, and so they didn't really know about like.
No, I don't think any undergrads, because we had people check in.
They
And
like
so like,
sign in.
because the second, I was there, the second the undergrads saw the sign, they basically walked away.
Okay.
The second they knew they had to check in, half of them, most of them walked away, so maybe some of them were.
Okay.
We
Yeah,
did
'cause
the check-in with the CAT card reader. He doesn't give us whether we are undergrad or grad.
It will after
And
the fact,
actually,
but we actually,
we're
they don't
looking into
when you're scanning
Slate
it.
here, and it's like the new computer software that like the grad center's using.
Okay.
So Stephanie Adamson has, you can check in on phones, anybody's phone, you can log in, and it'll be just grad students. So instead of using CAT card readers, we can use Slate now. But we have to set up templates, and they sign in advance for things, or like I asked her how we can get it all working, because it's pretty new. I was like, well, we should definitely do this for events, because it.
But it sounds like
basically-
even last year that wasn't too much of an issue as far
Mm-mm.
as.
I just am wondering what your opinions are on like
I.
doing something different, like a yes or no. Like I'm not saying we won't, but I just want to know right now so we can start planning
I wonder if it'd be
ideas.
better use of our money to do something more interactive. Something maybe like a competition between departments, colleges, or something like that, of some sort. Because at $13 and we expect 700, but I mean, reality, I don't know, we got more than 300, you know, coming and going. Most people just had thirds, fourths, fifths, and then some electrical. It would,
So you,
yeah,
so
I
you're
would love to
open
hear
the
some
idea.
new ideas.
So I just that's all I'm kind of gathering from today. Like I'm
Yeah.
not saying like I have any
because I think
huge
one thing
ones
with
yet, because I want to look over break.
graduate students that's come up with other things, campus pantry, other things. We're not all on campus every day. So if you have the event one day for 2 hours,
You're not.
you're
gonna
missing a
get-
large, percentage who might want to participate. But if they're teaching or they're not on campus that day, they don't get to attend and benefit. So I would love to hear some other ideas. I think the barbecue has been declining in success. I think in its heyday, it had a big turnout. They would set up tables or pictures of the event with a ton of people there. So I think at one point it probably made sense. I think it's not as popular the last few years.
I think that the way we market it actually will help with the event, because I think in the past, I don't know anybody who's actually heard of the event.
Right.
Before walking by.
Yeah.
So I think that might be one thing, like we blast this out to get a flyer to all the colleges and tell them, hey, we're doing this event for graduate students. I think you get a significant larger turnout, but would it still be worth our money? I don't know.
Barbecue's also tough, I think. I mean, I think it's a difficult thing to eat without the proper setting. I mean, it's hard to eat barbecue standing up.
Yeah.
It's hard to want barbecue
'Cause I'm just
without kind of planning for that type of heavy meal. A lot of people don't eat meat. I mean, I think there are just a lot of challenges to barbecue. So maybe it's a food event, but maybe it's different. Maybe it's not a food event and it's something that doesn't expire after, a few hours. But yeah, I'd love to hear other proposals and ways that we can celebrate graduate and professional students on campus this year. And, if barbecue is what we end up going to, I don't think there's any harm in
Right, but I just want to make sure,
exploring
like, if I
other
start brainstorming, it's not like people are gonna come at me and be like, "Oh, I really like the barbecue." That's kind of what I'm trying to get from all this. Nobody
I
here
think,
is
no,
totally for it, but like, I don't have.
I think you
major
have
ideas
enough
yet.
turnover of graduate students too, that even those that have
Can
their
we
heart
have
set
any-
on it is gonna be
Okay,
quite a minority.
and I plan to.
And I like
Break.
Dustin's idea of thinking of ideas that are more interactive,
And we can have
thoughtful,
a
unique.
vegetarian option also, as we are doing in Lal, we are Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
We
Well,
are having
that's
veg option
Mhm.
in that.
a minute detail for
Yeah, one
later,
of
but
If
that's
we're only minors, because I was thinking minor details. We can think of like even having 3 nights of food somewhere at a place that we can walk to on campus.
Mhm.
Opposed to all the money, you know what I mean? So it's like that targets
Mhm.
even more people because
then they
maybe
could go
3
to any
available
one of those
times
nights. I
to
love
get
that
pizza
idea.
for no anchovies since we have a good relationship.
Well, and
Yeah,
like,
something like that. That's
when I
kind of
was at the event, at the social event at No Anchovies, I sat down with Amanjad at her table, and I asked, like, what would you guys want for graduate and professional students? Would you want a barbecue? Would you want a T-shirt? What would be, meaningful for you? And there were a couple ideas that came out, but, largely they said more socials, more of this type of thing. It's fun to come to these and, hang out with our friends and meet new people. And
Granted, you're
then-
asking people who are already at the socials, but
Right, but I think there is that
There
interactive
is.
component, or more opportunities. So if you can't go to one, if you are in class during the barbecue, you can maybe go another night, and have another opportunity.
Mhm.
And the other thing was like, T-shirts are a dime a dozen, but that said, if it's unique to graduate and professional students, it's not something you can go buy from Target. Is this something you would care about?
because I know you've been talking about that. So if we did something like that, let's come up with an amazing design.
Yeah, and we talked about that over the summer of having, something funny or something unique, and, would that be something
I was
you would
saying
care
to
about?
have a mug, a coffee mug.
Put the
Yeah, and that was
hashtag
the
on
suggestion,
t-shirt.
is like they came up, they were like, well, T-shirts are kind of hard because, maybe it doesn't
Hopefully by
fit,
then
you have
this
to
is
deal
all
with
resolved and
sizes,
they
so
go
what about
away.
like a coffee tumbler or a coffee mug? Because graduate students drink a lot of coffee, so like an oversized coffee mug or a to-go tumbler, with that same idea.
Giveaway.
Yeah, and I like that idea, but,
I think
there's a number of
it's
things
a
I
cool
think.
thing for having a coffee mug.
Yeah, do an
But it's-
activity with giveaways. That's a good idea.
Yeah, having a GPSC tag or a Arizona thing written on it. And I think I would love to have coffee in that mug.
And maybe even like a social media poll, like you can do like a Facebook poll.
We could do something like
Yeah.
that.
Reach
So
out and
we
say,
come
what
up
do you
with
want?
some
We
ideas.
have been working on.
Yeah,
we
you
have
wanna-
a form that we've made.
Do you want food discount?
If you want something
Do you want-
informal, let me know. We
I
can
know.
run a poll on our
We
social
should do,
media.
we should do a dunk.
I figured I'd.
We should do dunk the GPSC
Perfect.
president and win a tumbler.
Better than the GPSC president, let's do a tomato toss to dunk Robbins. There's like
Yes.
the history of throwing tomatoes at Old Main,
There we go, yeah.
right?
Did you say, what?
Would it set the thing off though?
We could
If you
paint
throw it out.
baseballs like tomatoes. You could just throw a tomato at Dr. Robbins. I don't know. It's just an idea. We're just spitballing.
So anyways,
okay.
all of the above.
Well, I'm gonna
If
put a
anything,
form together
there's
and I'll
a
send that. I
like
just didn't
that.
wanna do all
I
this
don't
work
think
and
so.
somebody be like, oh, I love
Oh,
the
yeah,
project. So
absolutely.
that's all I was trying to gather from this,
Yeah.
so, okay.
I think Randall
Totally
Epp
run
would
by all
show
my
up to
ideas.
dunk
I don't know my ideas by
the
ideas.
GPSC
Yeah,
president.
Yeah.
Get up early.
The inept GPSC president.
No.
Um,
That kid would just line up back.
Do you think he could hit a target? Because he can't write an article. I'm just, maybe his true calling was baseball. It's hard to say. If you've seen him, well, we'll leave it at that. Officer reports. Anybody have anything to add that we have not already discussed?
No, I have RPC meeting tomorrow, research and policy from 1 to 2, and that's it.
Even though I gave up my time, I do have it. No, I sent this to you and Carolyn. I think I sent it to the entire executive board. We have a letter pretty well drafted for getting PhD students teaching. We want a small paragraph in there about GPS's support to that. So if you have anything that you think is vital to that support, please let me know. It's an issue that primarily affects humanities students, but I'd love anybody's feedback on it.
Have you talked to the grad college about that?
I haven't. No.
Okay, would you like me to send it over to them to see if they could help us add to it in a meaningful way?
Yeah, and I mean, we're trying to get some also data to add into that in terms of how many of the gen ed classes are being taught by adjunct versus full-time faculty and or grad students versus full-time faculty with departments who are not following that rule.
Okay, let's
So, yeah.
engage the grad college. They would be a good resource.
Okay.
You know, if they don't have anything we can add, that's okay, but I think it's worth reaching out.
Okay.
To our best
And it would
buddies here
be
on
good
campus.
for them to know that that's happening. So, because it's going to go to undergrad council.
Okay,
So,
okay.
as of the 13th is when we'll take it to the committee, and then the committee will likely approve to send it on.
Okay, so that's officer reports, announcements, items for future agendas. I think we have several of those.
And
So,
we are done.
I believe that's a motion.
Stop looking at me,
Call
boy.
to adjourn.
I have a
Is it?
motion. Do I have a second?
Yes.
I'll second it.
And a second. Hearing no objections.
So, yesterday me and Dustin were
Where's yours?
sitting and talking, and
Wait.
it was
In the end of the meeting.
We did, and the meeting's adjourned at 8:25 p.m.
You got through your first